That said, you learned that I'm in psychology. My background is in discourse, reading comprehension, learning from text, how people cope with complex information and make sense of it, or not, which is typically the case, although they don't necessarily know they haven't made sense of it. And I've worked, over the course of my career, I've worked with students directly on programs to be used with students, and through that work came to understand that the mediators of all of that stuff are the teachers, and the teachers are the ones I'm now working with to try and understand how teachers learn on the job. Once they're out in the field, there's much to learn. They learn much from just being in a classroom, and how that can be marshaled to have them renew and learn new things that they realize they need to learn. And how that happens, what these trajectories might look like, how professional development designated or directed to certain kinds of activities can facilitate. Sometimes it impedes, but we hope it facilitates the process of growth and becoming more able to engage students in active and meaningful ways with content. I've done a bunch of other kinds of stuff in my career. And they're all sort of available if you look at my website or my CV, which is on the website. But I'm going to have very limited time today to go into detail. So it's just a teaser as to who and what I am. Your turn.
So as I mentioned earlier, I'm Donald Wink. I'm a chemist. I was trained as a chemist, a synthetic organometallic chemist. Josh used to tell me not to say that because
I love it when you say that.
Down. Actually, it's just an act
It's like
of
home.
puffery. I came to UIC in 1992 to work on the general chemistry program. We do have a program in chemical education research now as well, along with Mike and Minjung. I'm in that program. I've done a lot of work around lab and curriculum development, mostly at the undergraduate level. Within learning sciences, most of the work that I've done has been associated with teacher education. So I've collaborated with Susan and Jim and others in looking deeply at how teachers get to know science, get to teach science, and the like.
Joe, you're on. Can you hear us? Can we hear you? Are you muted?
Yeah, I just wanted to mute for you guys. Yeah, is that better now?
Yeah, please introduce yourself.
Okay, great, yeah. Right, yeah. My name is Joe McAllis. I'm a first year faculty here at LSRI. The novelty of my robot isn't just novelty. The work that I do is in human-robot interaction, particularly for kids and in educational scenarios and environments. And so essentially I have built a research trajectory where I rely on the sort of social capacity of robots to build social relationships and interact socially, and try to use those sort of social connections and social relationships to help foster interest in science and learning in science as well.
Cool. It's very meta to hear a robot say all that, I just want to say. Thanks, Joe. Josh?
Yeah, it's a big flashy version of me, I suppose.
He's actually
Short,
bigger.
actually.
Josh
Yeah, much
Radinsky.
bigger, right, yeah. I get to feel small for me.
I'm faculty in curriculum and instruction and learning sciences. I got my degree in learning sciences about 20 years ago up at Northwestern. And I study teaching and learning, mainly teaching and learning with data visualizations and the ways that people, especially in social science situations and history classrooms, construct historical narratives with data, tell stories about society with data. I'm interested in the narration of identity, of race, of disability, through these data interactive texts and how in classrooms the kind of opportunities that those present. And a bunch of other things too, but that's sort of the broad parameters of what my research is about. I work with middle school, high school, and college teachers for the most part, and I've also done some work with community organizations and looking at the use of data in public debates. So.
Hi, again, I'm Minjung Ryu, and I am new to UIC. I joined UIC's chemistry and LSRI this summer. And my research is about again, STEM education for immigrant youth, English learners, and former refugee youth. And so within that research interest, two projects I have been working on. One is designing and providing informal after-school program for former refugee youth, where students speak multiple different languages and English with limited proficiency, and engaging them in like critical science literacy, meaning that not just like learning science content, but thinking about how to use science for the positive social change. And another project that I've been working on is building on that project. I started working with high school science teachers, so like what we can do in a formal school setting with what we learned in informal setting. So that's basically the idea. So currently I am trying to find school partners here in Chicago to work with us in that high school professional development project. And also I'm trying to find community organizations where I can provide some informal after school kind of program so that I can work with probably former refugee youth.
My name's Allison Castro-Superfund. I'm faculty here in Learning Sciences and in Math. So part of what I do in the Math department, I teach a number of courses for people who either are teachers or people who are going to be teachers. I mention that because some of my students in the past and even currently have used that as an opportunity to co-teach some of the courses with myself, use some of those courses as context for some of their research projects, either for courses or even some have used them as part of their dissertation studies. So there's a lot of work that goes on in thinking about how you design these courses and the ways that teachers need to develop their knowledge of math and ways they need it for teaching in particular. So it's so that's some of the work that I've been involved in the Math department. Here in Learning Sciences, some of the projects that I have that involve students here are, like Susan, I think a lot about teachers and teacher learning, particularly in mathematics. I'd say most recently some of the work that we're doing is really trying to think about how we can do research with teachers rather than just on, and trying to collaborate with them and think about how we can design professional learning opportunities in ways that are tailored to the particular problems of practice that teachers face in their classrooms, in their schools. Schools are nested in districts, et cetera. So kind of thinking about how all the different organizational layers impact what happens in classrooms is part of what I've been thinking about.
Hello, I'm Mike Stife. I'm a faculty member in Learning Sciences and also in chemistry. A big chemistry showing today here. My research sort of falls into two buckets that I like to put them in. Some people don't like the buckets, but it helps me organize. Content and climate are the two buckets. On the content side of things, I work in undergraduate chemistry departments and secondary chemistry classrooms to do two sorts of things. One is we build a lot of educational technology around putting dynamic simulations in front of students to help them engage with scientific models that they often can't see, but their teachers are talking about all of the time during instruction. At the undergraduate level, we focus mostly on spatial thinking as it occurs in the STEM disciplines. So when are students being asked to interrogate spatial relationships, again, in things that they can't see? There, most of our work focuses less so on technology and more so on gestures and bodies and how we can help students understand spatial relationships better by using their bodies to engage with those ideas instead of diagrams or models. Putting molecules on your fingers is one way to think about it. On the climate side of things, I work with undergraduate STEM faculty in large lecture classrooms in professional development experiences to help them engage in self-reflection about how their students are experiencing that lecture, not the content, but how the students perceive the faculty members in front of the classroom, and how they engage with each other to help foster a better sense of belonging among the students so that they can self-motivate to persist when they're asked to engage with spatial thinking that is hard to do.
Questions for any of the faculty? Anything you want to know more about? No?
What does what molecules on your fingers mean?
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah. That's a good question for quite a diverse audience. I teach organic chemistry here. That's part of my disciplinary specialization. I teach Organic 1. And one of the concepts that students are asked to learn in that class is a concept of stereochemistry. Are people familiar with this? Do you know what this means? A molecule, you know, is comprised of atoms. Yes?
Okay, you asked him this question.
Right.
and You're doing it.
Here's how it matters. So one molecule comprised of the same atoms as another molecule, right, can actually be totally different from that other molecule if those atoms are arranged differently in three-dimensional space. So they look the same in terms of their constituency, but in terms of their spatial relationships, they're not the same at all. And this is very, very important because, for example, when you're designing a drug, one of those molecules you eat and it helps you, the other one you eat and it hurts you pretty significantly. So understanding the differences in those spatial relationships is really important. And it turns out that they're just mirror images of one another, right? So we have students do things like make gestures to show the mirror images to help them better understand where the atoms are, if the atoms are the tips of your fingers. Did I do it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Did it.
Well.
Nice.
Mina?
We have a question.
From Maggie O'Brien.
What is the best way to know which faculty are accepting advisees, and is it possible to work across labs or have co-advisors?
The best way is to send an email, which I think Maggie O'Brien may have done already, I'm not sure. But send an email to faculty members that take a look at our websites and see who you're interested in working with, and send an email and ask people whether they're accepting advisees. That's the simple way. If they don't answer your email immediately, please email them again and forgive us.
Or email me.
Or email Jessica and she will make it happen. I would also say that collaboration among faculty is constant. We are very interactive with each other, and most students have opportunities to work with, all students have opportunities to work with multiple faculty and to have us for classes. If you're not on a research project and you want to know more about it, if you ask to come to a meeting, it will almost always be possible for you to attend a meeting and get involved. I don't know, you guys want to add anything?
And one of the things that goes on is because we've also got parallel projects in some way. Faculty and their groups may be a little bit of ahead on a particular way of thinking about something, and sending a student to go talk to another faculty member about something. Some of this is nitty-gritty about how do you get permission to work with kids in schools, but some of it is also very abstract. So if something came up, we were thinking about graphical representations, there's almost no doubt that we would talk to Mike. If we were thinking about language, there's no doubt that we would talk to Min Jung and Susan. And that's something that's very common for me to look at a student and say, hey, I'm trained in organometallic chemistry. Go talk to Goldman if you want to think about words. But that's the way it works. I mean, that's very fluid here, I think.
So the other thing I should point out is that because we also ask you to have a disciplinary specialization or specialization in addition to the learning sciences major, people often draw co-advisors from that specialization. So several people have, for example, one of our current students, Laura Zella, is interested in physics as well as LS, and she has the head of the physics department is her co-advisor. So we're pretty flexible in reaching out and also recognizing that one individual, one faculty member doesn't necessarily have everything that you need, and you really need to work with the advisor. All of us are very open to arrangements that meet the learning goals and learning needs that you have, and the people who can provide the resources for you to learn what you need to learn.
And people change advisors, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're accepted to the program, you'll get a letter, and what we do is based on your application materials and the statement that you write, we try to come up with the best pairing for the time, right? And that, so the advisor name goes in the letter, and like Jessica just said, you don't have to, if you don't have to stay with the same advisor throughout your entire time in the program, but that's just sort of our first sort of best guess based on your interests and based on things that we've learned about you through the application process. So, and even within LS, we have some examples of co-advising among LS faculty. So myself, for example, I co-advise with Jill Pellegrino 3 students 2, 3, I can't remember. But at least 2 students we co-advised. So these were students who were interested in assessment design and mathematics. So Jim sort of brings the assessment expertise, and I bring what I bring.
I'll also mention we have, in addition to the core learning sciences faculty, we have faculty affiliates in a number of different departments, so that there are people who are affiliated with learning sciences, co-advise, serve on dissertation committees over here. And you can find them on the website if you want to take a look at who those folks are.
We have another question. Are there any faculty members from computer science? And what current projects or faculty contributions to LS are happening with CS graduates? And also, why is the school only offering a PhD program and not a master's?
Yeah, good question. We wish we had a master's program because there's a lot of interest in it, but we have not. We're a small faculty and a relatively new program and haven't put that master's program together. But Joe, I think you're the spokesperson for computer science in the room right now. You want to say a little bit?
Yeah, that's my job now. Yeah, I mean, so I'm the direct link to computer science. So the projects that I have going on are really closely related to what I sort of introduced as my research area. But I'm kind of taking 2 strands right now. One where I'm working on in-home companion robots that are designed to be reading companions with kids. And essentially that project is something where we design the in-home interactions that while kids would read a book to a robot, the robot is programmed to say some sort of comment that would be there to be deliberate for supports for, you know, either learning or knowledge building, interest development, or also just that sort of social interaction part too. And then the idea there is that by having an in-home companion, you can also coordinate that with in-classroom or informal environments, so that if the robot's aware of what's happening in classrooms, can utilize that understanding to facilitate learning, facilitate the relationship building. So that's one major strand. I have some funding on that, and Rabia has been working with me, and we're partnering with University of Wisconsin to pull that off right now. And then I'm working on a grant right now where I will be designing this robot actually that I'm on now, the Temi robot, designing that as a classroom assistant. And it'll perform 2 functions in a classroom, one where it'll be there to support students in their learning. So the robot itself could go to small groups or even individuals, know a lot about the learner themselves and then the progress of their activities and give them some personalized support. But there's also a role for the robot to help teachers in their classroom orchestration so that they can be something that, you know, the sort of menial tasks of like divvying up groups, or, you know, just checking in basic things on an assignment to make sure that students are on task, those sort of things. We can offload some of those roles to the robot, and then the robot can kind of coordinate with the teacher to help make that orchestration work better. So those are the 2 lines of projects that I have going on now. And then sort of as funding and students dictate, I will kind of look to branch off and keep working on those 2 major areas for now.
What about Brenda's course?
Yeah, and I'll add to that a couple things. One is that we also have Layla Lyons was a core faculty here. She's the director at the New York Science Museum, but she still is serving as, she's still an advisor of a student in learning sciences here, and as somebody who can be a faculty mentor to students in computer science here. And Tom Moore is emeritus faculty. He is retired now, but he brought Radhika here today. And he's got active programs of research happening as well in computer science. And then Brenda Lopez Silva is not a faculty member, but she is our design specialist. What's Brenda's title? Is she gonna, I don't know if she's gonna be here later on.
She'll be here at 3.
Brenda is a sort of a connection between the computer science and learning sciences. She is our guru in the design lab. She's working to sort of build bridges between what some other computer science faculty are building and the kinds of studies of learning that we're doing over here. So there are multiple connections to computer science.
We have another 2 questions.
Yeah, one thing I'll also add too, I just want to add quick too that in the computer science faculty as well, you'll have an advisor in a disciplinary focus. And so the UIC CS department has some excellent people in natural language processing and in like large-scale visualization, those sort of things. So as you're looking for that kind of disciplinary role as well, there's some great complementary computer science faculty that understand education, understand learning sciences work. That would be a good complement for somebody interested in that too.
That's awesome. Thanks, Joe. Sorry, Mina.
A question from Emmanuel. Is it possible for a student to work on their research interests, or will they be assigned and work with the faculty member's interests?
The program's built on apprenticeship from the beginning, so that it's assumed that people will start working on projects right away. That's usually going to be an existing project that a faculty member already has going. Each student's dissertation is unique, and some of them are very self-directed. So both Emma Hospelhorn and Jose Melendez did dissertations that was completely independent, not funded by a faculty member, and coordinated with their advisors and mentors on that work. Whereas other people have carved out dissertations within funded research projects. It's very much student by student. There's not a model here where you come in and just do your own thing and then get the PhD because you finished your coursework. It's always collaborative and actively involved with the mentoring and advising. So it's not a place where you can sort of do your own thing without being part of the community, but it is a place where if you can figure out with your advisor how to fund the work, you can do independent research that is self-directed and not necessarily part of what your advisor is doing. There's not a model here either where it's assumed that you do, the advisor gives you tasks, you go and do it, and that's your dissertation. It's always going to be more directed by the student.
Maggie's wondering, what are the philosophies of LSRI on multi-method research designs as well as community-based participatory research?
It's a lot of interest here. Do you want to talk about community-based participatory research, or?
I don't know the philosophy.
Okay, I'm interested like I'm doing here.
I think it's great.
I do too. Mixed methods. There's a lot of people doing work that can be described as mixed methods over here. I find that people who are trying to do things that are deeply quantitative and deeply qualitative at the same time for their dissertation sometimes come to regret that decision, and it's a hard road to hoe, and so that's a longer, more detailed conversation probably. But in terms of a particular kind of methodology that you're supposed to follow, it's not the way it is here. Very different methods are used by different people. There tends to be more qualitative work than quantitative work over here, but that's not exclusively true. Participatory research with communities, highly approved of and smiled upon, and most of us have written papers with our community collaborators in one way and another, have done work that is coordinated and collaborative with people in the community. I don't know. People want to jump in on that?
No, it's a good response, I think.
Thanks, Allison.
Elham asks, are there any faculty members interested in game-based assessment or learning? If so, could they explain their current project?
If so, step forward. Where are you? It's a gap in our learning sciences program. There's a lot of learning sciences people who study game-based learning in one way or another. We don't have anyone here doing that right now. That doesn't mean we can't have a doc student doing it.
But there are other programs going on at the university. I'm thinking particularly of the Crypto Club.
Yeah.
So the math department has a major initiative involving some people who have worked within learning sciences. I wouldn't say that those are learning sciences projects per se.
It's not here, it's now at U of C.
It's now at U of C?
Yeah.
UIC originated a project which is now in a derivative form in another institution, but it's really, the point is that there have been examples of game-based work done.
And there are doc students doing work here that has relevance to game-based learning as well. And Brenda is very interested in sort of participatory, immersive visualization work that borders into the first-person game-based learning as well. So that's the answer to that one. Okay, I think we should probably turn it over to the students now, unless there's any other questions for faculty before we do.
I have a question. I think UIC recently received a grant to look at K-8 math instruction. Are any current learning science students involved in that, or would they be able to be involved in that?
Yes. So, we did. That's one of my projects that I have with some colleagues in the College of Education. Yes, there's definitely opportunities for students to get involved in that work. Currently, we have 6 graduate students working with us and a handful of research faculty. So there's definitely opportunities that we can think about for sure. So.
Yes,
a little bit more about the work that you're doing with organizational learning. your interest with that?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it organizational learning exactly as far as my work goes, although James, who is here, is a doc student and faculty in the business school, is interested in organizational learning, so he could talk to you about it when he comes back later on. But I'm interested in the learning that happens with data visualizations with like advocacy organizations, community organizations in public debates about education. So this is work that we don't currently have funding for. We've tried twice and didn't quite get it from WT grant, and we're going to try to go back again. But in collaboration with a colleague of mine in special education, Federico Whitetoller, we've been interested in the ways that people in parent organizations, Chicago Teachers Union, and the different public policy arms have disputed and debated policies like the special education policy changes that landed us in the Illinois State Board of Ed receivership, the closing of neighborhood schools, opening of charter schools. I've got a doc student in the College of Ed now studying the use of data maps in those debates. So it's not so much about organizational change, although we are studying organizational change in 513 next semester. That's an area that would be really interesting to look at. And a lot of us are interested in sort of classroom level change and district level change and building level change of schools, so that's got different kinds of organizational learning that you would study in each of those. I don't know, am I answering your question?
Yeah.
If you're really looking at org change as a thing, what probably would happen is that you would have a learning sciences advisor here and maybe somebody either in urban planning or in business who would be a disciplinary advisor. And we do have strong collaborations in urban planning with a number of people over there. Mina?
Emmanuel asks which projects are available with the mathematics education faculty.
I mean, I think it's about, there are a range of opportunities I think that students could get involved in. The extent to which those would be actually funded, right? It's unclear, stuff sort of changes from year to year. But there are opportunities to get involved in some teaching. There are a couple of projects that, we'd be happy for students to participate in as research assistants that have to do with working with teachers, specifically elementary teachers, K-8. So there's a range of opportunities, I think.
And along those lines, just to add to what I said earlier, the way that the program works is that we admit a cohort, a relatively small cohort of students, and when we're making those decisions about admissions, we're looking basically at two things. One is this a person who will thrive as a learning sciences researcher? Like, is this the right fit for you? Are you the right person to thrive in this program, do great work? And then the other one is, can we support this person? And as Allison's answer suggests, the students that we can support very much depends on what we've got funded and what kinds of mentoring resources we have. So if somebody wants to do something and we can't see how will we fund that person for 5 years, who would serve as that person's advisor? If we can't solve that problem, then we can't admit that person because we commit to a 5-year support for students. So that's sort of the two sides of it. You guys looking at the program should be looking at what kind of work do I want to do? Could I do it there? And then we need to look at each of you and say, can we support this person? Is this a person that will be able to give them a place to thrive? So just wanted to say that.
I'm sorry, on average, how many applicants do you have?
25, how many? 30?
35.
35, yeah.
Yeah.
And we admit 4 to 6 on the average, I
Well,
think.
we 4 to 6 come here. We usually admit a few more than
Yeah.
that. Right?
We enroll.
Right, we enroll them.
We shoot for a cohort of 5 every year.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
you should be very ready to go and correspond with the faculty and ask questions. I mean, no faculty member would ever or should ever turn to a student and say, "Oh boy, you just apply and I'll get you in." That's not the way it works. This is collaborative. We have to look. But the fact is that you should explore those projects with us individually in conversation, because we want to know you. You need to know us, and that's a very important part of this process.